everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, we shall discuss a special property of Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function. So it is given in the form of a theorem. Let f be a real valued bounded function on closed interval a comma b, and along with alpha be a monotonically increasing function on the closed interval a comma b. Now suppose f is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable on the closed interval a comma b, and the f of x values lie in between small m and capital M, and phi is a continuous function on the closed interval small m capital M, and h of x is the composition of continuous function phi and the function f on the closed interval a comma b. Then h is a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function on the closed interval a comma b. So here, first of all, f is given to be a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function on the closed interval a comma b, and along with that, the function values. So as x varies over the closed interval a comma b, the function values f of x so lie in between small m and capital M, or in other words, I can say, so f of x vary over the closed interval small m capital M. So f is a function from closed interval a comma b to, and its function values lie in closed interval small m capital M. So f is a function whose domain is closed interval a comma b and codomain is closed interval m capital M. And now on the codomain of f, so we have a continuous function phi. So phi is a real valued continuous function on the closed interval m capital M. That is, phi in particular, it is defined for all the images of f. So f is a function from closed interval a comma b to closed interval m small m, and phi is a function from small closed interval small m capital M to r. Now compose it. Now take the composition of these two functions. So it will be a function from closed interval a comma b to r. So h of x is defined to be phi of f of x. So it is defined for all closed interval a comma b. So for any x in closed interval a comma b, so f of x is carried to close interval small m capital M, and for any point in close interval small m capital M, phi is carried to a real number. So h is composition of a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function and a continuous function phi. Then the resulting function h will be Riemann-Stieltjes integrable. So this theorem says that whenever a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function f is composed with the continuous function phi, then the resulting function is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable, or in simple words, composition of a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function and a continuous function is always Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function. So now we shall start with the hypothesis. So what are all the things they have given? So given f is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable on the closed interval a comma b, and f of x lie in between small m and capital M, or f of x belongs to closed interval small m capital M for all x varying over closed interval a comma b. That means, so f is actually a function from closed interval a comma b to closed interval small m capital M. So closed interval a comma b is the domain, closed interval m small m, that is small m capital M, is the codomain. Right now, phi is a continuous function on this closed interval. So phi is continuous function on the compact set closed interval m m. So we all know that the closed interval on R is always compact, being closed and bounded. So as any closed interval is a closed and bounded subset of R, by Heine-Borel theorem, it will be compact. So closed interval small m capital M is a compact set, and phi is a continuous function on this compact set. So any continuous function on the compact set is uniformly continuous, and also it attains maximum and minimum. That is, since phi is continuous on the compact set, this is a compact set. So since phi is a continuous function on a compact set, so phi attains maximum and minimum, on close interval a comma, close interval small m capital M. So that is, so for all phi of t values, as t varies over this closed interval, so those phi of t values has some maximum, say it is k1, and all these phi of t values have the minimum also over the closed interval small m capital M, say it is k2. So since phi is a continuous function on a compact set, it attains maximum and minimum. That is, for all function values, there is some maximum k1, and for all function values phi of t, there is some minimum. So I can write phi of t lies in between k2 and k1. So all these values are less than or equal to k1, which is the maximum of all this, and it is greater than or equal to k2, which is the minimum of all these functions. So you can see phi of t values are bounded between k2 and k1, or in other words, I can say the function f is bounded on the closed interval small m capital M. So these are the things which are given. So f is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable on the closed interval a comma b. So uh, closed interval small m capital M is the codomain of f of x, and on that codomain phi is defined. Phi is defined where phi is a continuous function on that compact set, hence it will be uniformly compact. So the mapping is like this: from closed interval a comma b to small m capital M. So we have function f. So from small m to small m capital M to R, we have phi. So we are composing these two functions using h. So now we have to prove h is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable on the closed interval a comma b, right? So h, we have defined h of x as phi of f of x, which is the composition of two functions f and phi. So for any h of x, we are defining phi of f of x. For any x in closed interval a comma b, so first of all, for any x here, so f of x will be carried to here, and for any f of x here, phi of f of x is carried to any real number. So clearly h is a well-defined real valued function, and it is also bounded. It is also bounded because, so h is basically a real valued function on the closed interval a comma b, which is also bounded, because if we consider any h of x, so what is it? Modulus of h of x, it is phi of f of x, and where f of x varies over closed interval small m capital M. But for any t varying over closed interval small m capital M, they are bounded between k2 and k1, right? So these values are less than or equal to k1. So these values will be less than or equal to k1. Similarly, as these values are bounded above by k2, bounded below by k2, so h of x values will also be, so they will be bounded above by k1 and bounded below by k2, right? So h of x values are bounded between k1 and k2. So h will be a bounded real valued function. So basically h is a bounded real valued function. Now you can talk about its Riemann-Stieltjes integrability. So we all know that to talk about Riemann-Stieltjes integrability of a function, first of all, that function has to be a bounded real valued function. So now we verified that h is a bounded real valued function first of all. So now we shall move on to proving h is a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function on the closed interval a comma b. So where we will verify the Riemann criterion for integrability to show h is a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function. So just we'll prove for every epsilon there is a partition P such that u, p, So the function is h. So up h alpha minus lp h alpha is less than epsilon. So we will prove this condition, which is the Riemann criterion for integrability. So start with an epsilon, let epsilon greater than 0 be given. Now, as h is bounded, so as h is bounded, so here itself you can see modulus of h of x are bounded above by k1. So if we collect all modulus of h of x as x varies over the closed interval a comma b, then this set will form a non-empty set of real numbers which is bounded above. Any non-empty set of real numbers bounded above will have supremum, and we have taken that supremum as k. So clearly exists. So supremum of modulus of h of x exists as h is a bounded function. Okay, now we shall use the hypothesis one by one. So first of all, phi is given to be a continuous function on the closed interval small m capital M, hence it is uniformly continuous. So phi is uniformly continuous on the closed interval small m capital M. So use the definition of uniform continuity. So what it means, for every epsilon there exists a delta, but here I am choosing delta to be less than epsilon. So for any given epsilon, I need a positive delta which is less than epsilon, such that phi of s minus phi of t is less than epsilon whenever the distance between s and t is less than delta, which holds for all the points in the domain of phi. Now the question is, for any given epsilon, can I have such a delta? So by the definition, obviously for every epsilon there exists some delta, but the question is that delta is less than epsilon always. So now if at all the delta which exists is less than epsilon, then there is no problem. So for any given epsilon, so obviously there exists a delta. If the delta is already less than epsilon, then I have the desired property. Suppose it is greater than or equal to epsilon. Suppose the delta which exists corresponding to epsilon is greater than or equal to epsilon. Then choose a delta naught in between epsilon and 0. So between any two reals there exists a rational by density property. So between epsilon and 0 we can find a delta naught, where you can observe delta naught is less than epsilon and it is also less than delta. Now what this condition says, this condition says that modulus of phi of s minus phi of t is less than epsilon whenever the distance between s and t is less than delta. Whenever this modulus value is less than delta, then this condition will be obviously less than epsilon. Now if I consider the distance between s and t to be less than delta, consider all those points in the closed interval m capital M with the distance less than delta naught. So as delta naught is less than delta, so this distance will be less than delta. And whenever this distance is less than delta, this distance will be less than epsilon. And where we got a delta which is less than epsilon. So that shows that in any case, given any epsilon, we can find a delta which is less than epsilon, and this condition holds. Okay, this is one thing. And the other thing which is given is f is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable. So f is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable means what? Given any positive epsilon value, there is a partition P such that UP of alpha minus LP of alpha is less than epsilon. Now we shall argue that condition for positive value delta square. So delta is a positive value, so delta square is also a positive value. So for positive value corresponding to delta square, there exists a partition P of closed interval a comma b such that UP of alpha minus LP of alpha is less than delta square. Right? Just here we have argued the Riemann criterion for integrability of f, as f is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable. For any positive value, there exists a partition. So argue for this positive value, there obviously there will be a partition P with this condition, where UPF alpha and LPF alpha are upper Riemann-Stieltjes sums and lower Riemann-Stieltjes sums of f with respect to alpha respectively. Right? As we have considered the partition P of closed interval a comma b, we have already noted that any partition of a closed interval a comma b will divide the closed interval a comma b into subintervals x0 to x1, x1 to x2, so on, xn minus 1 to xn. Any general interval will be of the form xi minus 1 xi. Now, as f is given to be a bounded function on the closed interval a comma b, f will be bounded on each of the subinterval. So that is f of x values will be bounded in this interval. So their supremum exists. So call it as mi, and also infimum exists, call it as small mi. Similarly, if I consider h of x on the same closed interval a comma b, the domain of h is closed interval a comma b, and consider the same partition p of the closed interval a comma b, so that this partition divides the closed interval a comma b into subintervals, and on each subinterval h is also bounded, as h is bounded on the whole interval closed interval a comma b. So as h is bounded on each subinterval, so supremum of h of x as x varies over any ith interval exists. Call it as mi star. And infimum of h of x also exists. Call it as small mi star. Now we shall distinguish. So how many closed intervals are there? x0 to x1, x1 to x2, so on xn minus 1 to xn. So there are actually n subintervals. And with respect to each subinterval, we will be defining mi. So for n values, we will be defining mi and capital Mi and small mi. So now we shall distinguish these indices based on the value of capital Mi and small mi. So for each I, calculate capital Mi and small mi and see what is the difference capital Mi and small mi. If at all that value is less than delta, if at all that value is less than delta, then put the corresponding index I in the set A. And if at all that value is greater than or equal to delta, then put the corresponding index I in B. So like this, segregate the indices from 1 to n based on the value of capital Mi minus small mi. So this is just to use the uniform continuity of phi. So if at all capital Mi minus small mi is less than delta, then using this condition, we can apply uniform continuity of phi for corresponding intervals. So if with respect to, suppose with respect to this interval xi minus 1 xi, capital Mi minus small mi is less than delta, then with respect to these points, we can argue the uniform continuity. We'll see that later. So just to use that uniform continuity, we'll segregate the indices. So segregate like this. So for any I, capital Mi minus small mi is less than delta means put that I in A. Similarly, if capital Mi minus small mi is greater than or equal to delta, then put that indices in B. So do this for all these indices from 1 to n. So as these two sets are categorized oppositely, so here we'll collect all those indices with this value less than delta. Here we will collect all those indices for which this value is greater than or equal to delta. So these two are opposite conditions. So these two will be opposite sets. So that means these two sets will contain no common points, because for any I, capital Mi minus small mi cannot be both less than or greater than or equal to delta. So A intersection B will be obviously empty. And as we have checked for all the indices from 1 to n, so any indices from 1 to n will be either in A or B. So in any case, it will be in the union. Okay, now, with respect to the partition P, consider the difference U PH alpha minus L PH alpha. So which by the definition, so this is the upper Riemann-Stieltjes sum of H with respect to the partition P and the monotonically increasing function alpha. So L PH alpha is what? It is the lower Riemann-Stieltjes sum of the function H with respect to the partition P and the monotonically increasing function alpha. So this is defined as upper Riemann-Stieltjes sum is defined as summation of all supremums mi star into delta alpha I running from 1 to n minus lower Riemann-Stieltjes sums are defined as summation mi small mi star into delta alpha, where these are all infimums. As both the summations are running over the same indices, we can combine and delta alpha will be common. So now all the indices from 1 to n can be segregated into two sets. So indices from 1 to n are separated using the sets A and B. Some indices will be in A and the remaining indices will be in B. So if I add these two summations, finally you will get once again summation from 1 to n. So this summation can be written as summation over all indices A plus summation over all indices belonging to B. So This difference can be written as sum of these two summations. Now, at last, finally, we have to prove this difference is less than epsilon. So that by Riemann criterion for integrability, h will be a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function. So for that, we shall evaluate these two summations. First, for all indices I in A, we have categorized those indices as capital Mi minus small mi is less than delta. Where what is capital Mi minus small mi? We have seen this previously. So this difference will be actually supremum of all the values modulus of f of s minus f of t as s and t vary over the ith subinterval xi minus 1 xi. So we have already seen this in some of the previous theorems. So see to it. So as it is the supremum, it will be least upper bound. So first of all, it will be an upper bound. That means capital Mi minus small mi will be greater than or equal to all the values modulus of f of s minus f of t for all s and t varying over the ith subinterval. But for all these indices, capital Mi minus small mi is less than delta. That means distance between these 2 points is less than delta, where as s and t vary over this closed interval, what is xi minus 1 xi? This is actually a subinterval of closed interval a comma b. That means as s and t vary over the closed interval a comma b, f of s and f of t, their images, where will be those images? So f of s, f of t will be in the codomain, that is small m capital M, close interval small m capital M. So for any 2 points in this interval, the distance between these 2 points is less than delta. Now use the uniform continuity of phi. Since phi is uniformly continuous, as distance between these 2 points is less than delta, phi of f of s minus phi of f of t will be less than epsilon for all s and t varying over this closed interval. But phi of f of s is nothing but h of s. Phi of f of t is nothing but h of t by our definition. That is, h of s, modulus of h of s minus h of t is less than epsilon for all s and t varying over the ith subinterval. So as we defined, or as we have observed, that capital M minus small mi is the supremum of all modulus of f of s minus f of t. In a similar way, we can observe that capital Mi star minus small mi star is the supremum of all modulus of h of s minus h of t, as s and t vary over the ith subinterval. So that is capital Mi and capital Mi minus small mi is actually the supremum of these values. Supremum of modulus of h of s minus h of t as s and t vary over this interval. But by this condition, what we are observing, epsilon is actually becoming an upper bound for all these values. So this is the least upper bound and this is an upper bound. So what is the relation? Least upper bound will be always less than or equal to the upper bound. So this is true for all the indices I varying over A. So with this condition, we shall simplify this summation which is running over the set A. So for all indices I in A, capital Mi star minus small mi star is actually less than or equal to epsilon. So epsilon is constant, take it outside. So we are remained with summation delta alpha I running over A. It is less than or equal to summation I running from 1 to n. So A contains some indices from 1 to n. Now add all the remaining indices to the indices in A. Then you will get the complete set from 1 to n. So that is, we are adding extra terms. Delta alpha is our non-negative terms. We are adding extra non-negative terms here. So this sum will be greater than or equal to this sum. But what is summation delta alpha I n from 1 to n? It is alpha of b minus alpha of a. So into epsilon as it is. So finally we'll get the summation is less than or equal to epsilon into alpha of b minus alpha of e. That means we made this is less than or equal to some arbitrary positive value. Similarly, we have to do with the indices in B also. So for all indices in B, capital Mi minus small mi is greater than or equal to delta, so that if I consider the summation running over B, so for each I in B, this number is greater than or equal to delta. So delta we can take outside. This summation will be less than or equal to this one. And once again, here this summation is running over only for the indices B. Now add the remaining indices which are in A also. So the complete set you will get from 1 to n. So as we are adding an extra terms, extra non-negative terms to this, so this summation will be less than or equal to this summation. So now what is this? We can separate this summation capital M I into delta alpha I minus summation small m I into delta alpha I. So which is nothing but UPF alpha, and this is nothing but LPF alpha. So which is in turn delta less than delta square. We have already made it that using the Riemann criterion for F, so that this summation will be less than delta square. As delta is a positive value, divide the inequality by delta on both sides, so that you will get this summation to be less than delta. But we have chosen delta to be less than epsilon. So this summation is less than epsilon. Now we have already defined that k as the supremum of these h of x values, modulus of h of x values, so that k is the supremum means least upper bound. In particular, it is an upper bound. So modulus of h of x will be less than or equal to k as x varies over the closed interval a comma b, or in other words, h of x lies in between minus k and plus k. Now observe that as it is true for all the points in closed interval a comma b, it will be true for any subinterval in particular. So h of x lies in between minus k and plus k for all points x in this interval. But for all points x in this interval, so supremum of all h of x is defined to be mi star, and infimum of all h of x is defined to be small mi star. So for all these values, we have a supremum which is capital Mi star. That means it is the least upper bound. But by this inequality, you can observe that k becomes an upper bound. So any upper bound will be greater than or equal to the least upper bound. Similarly, small mi star is infimum, that is greatest lower bound. And by this inequality, h of x are all greater than or equal to minus k. That means it forms a lower bound. So minus k is a lower bound, which will be less than or equal to greatest lower bound. Multiply minus on both sides, so that inequality inverse. So minus mi star will be less than or equal to k. So that capital Mi star minus small mi star will be less than or equal to k plus k, which will be less than or equal, which is 2k. So by these two conditions, so one is this and the other is this one. So by combining these two, we can simplify the second one, which is varying over the set B. So for each I varying over B, this number is less than or equal to 2k. Just now we have saw, take it outside, summation I running over B delta alpha I, we have made it to be less than epsilon. So this whole summation will be less than 2k epsilon. Now combine both things. So we have UPH alpha minus LPH alpha is equal to this summation plus this summation. So we have made this to be less than alpha of b minus alpha of a, and this to be less than 2k epsilon. As both the terms contain epsilon, take common, so that it will be epsilon into something. As here epsilon is free to choose, so you can choose any epsilon value. So as you choose epsilon to be negligibly zero, as you choose epsilon to be smaller and smaller, we can make this distance as small as we desire. So as epsilon becomes smaller and smaller, the whole right hand side becomes smaller and smaller, so that we can make this distance as less than any positive value. So hence we conclude that H is Riemann-Stieltjes integrable. Or to get the perfect result, that is UPH alpha minus LPH alpha is less than epsilon, so I have to make some changes. So what we have done, we have argued all along with the epsilon value. Instead of that, we have to choose some epsilon 1. So choose epsilon 1 to be such that epsilon 1 into this number is less than epsilon. So such an epsilon 1 exists, as in the previous theorem we have explained the same way by Archimedean property. As epsilon is positive, n into epsilon will be greater than this value, so that take n to this side, 1 by n into this value will be less than epsilon. Take that 1 by n itself as epsilon 1, which will be positive. So obviously there exists an epsilon 1 value with this condition. Now what all the things which you have done using the epsilon, repeat the same with epsilon 1 instead of epsilon. So wherever you see epsilon in the above theorem, so put epsilon 1 there. Then finally you will obtain this condition. So just in place of epsilon, you will get epsilon 1. So that this number will be in turn less than epsilon by this condition. So that you will get a perfect condition according to the Riemann criterion for integrability. That is UPH alpha minus LPH alpha is less than epsilon. So this completes the proof. So thus, in this theorem, we proved that if f is any Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function and phi is any continuous function on the codomain of f, then by combining or composing phi and f, the function which you will get will be also Riemann-Stieltjes integrable. That is, composition of a Riemann-Stieltjes integrable function and a continuous function is always Riemann-Stieltjes integrable.